Title: The Garden of Discontent. Chapter 1: The Seeds of Conflict. In the heart of a quiet suburban neighborhood, where the streets were lined with manicured lawns and blooming flower beds, lived two neighbors whose lives had become entangled in a web of discontent. Sarah, a passionate gardener with a flair for vibrant colors, had transformed her backyard into a lush oasis filled with roses, daisies, and her favorite, sunflowers. These towering yellow blooms stood proudly, their faces turned toward the sun, a testament to her dedication and love for gardening. Next door, Tom was a practical man, a retired engineer who took pride in his vegetable garden. He grew tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers, nurturing them with the same care that Sarah devoted to her flowers. Tom valued the sunlight that streamed into his yard, believing it essential for his crops to thrive. However, the sight of Sarah's sunflowers, which swayed gently in the breeze, began to irk him. He felt they were encroaching on his space, casting shadows over his beloved vegetables. The tension between them had been brewing for months, like a storm gathering on the horizon. It all began innocently enough, with Sarah planting her sunflowers along the shared fence line. She envisioned a vibrant display that would not only beautify her yard, but also create a natural barrier between their properties. However, Tom saw it differently. To him, the sunflowers were a threat, a looming presence that would steal precious sunlight from his garden. As the weeks passed, their conflict escalated. Tom, unable to tolerate the sight of the towering flowers, took matters into his own hands. One afternoon, armed with pruning shears, he ventured into his yard and began to cut down the sunflowers that had grown too tall for his liking. Sarah, witnessing the act from her kitchen window, felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could he do this? They had always been cordial neighbors, but now it seemed that their relationship was spiraling into hostility. The next day, Sarah retaliated. She decided to plant even more sunflowers, determined to reclaim her garden and assert her right to beautify her space. The vibrant yellow blooms multiplied, creating a sea of color that danced in the sunlight. But instead of bringing her joy, the act only deepened the rift between her and Tom. Their once friendly exchanges turned into cold nods and terse greetings, each encounter laced with unspoken resentment. As the summer wore on, the feud became the talk of the neighborhood. Neighbors whispered about the sunflower war, and some even took sides. Sarah's friends encouraged her to stand her ground, while Tom's acquaintances advised him to take legal action. The tension hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating any sense of community that had once thrived in their neighborhood. One evening, as Sarah tended to her garden, she felt a wave of frustration wash over her. She had always found solace in her flowers, but now they felt like a source of conflict. She longed for the days when she and Tom would exchange gardening tips and share the bounty of their harvests. The thought of their friendship, now tarnished by a simple disagreement, weighed heavily on her heart. As she knelt in the soil, planting yet another row of sunflowers, Sarah realized that she didn't want to continue this cycle of retaliation. She wanted to find a way to resolve the conflict, to restore the sense of community that had been lost. But how could she reach out to Tom after everything that had happened? The thought of approaching him felt daunting, yet she knew that something had to change. That night, as she sat on her porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Sarah made a decision. She would invite Tom over for a garden party. It was a bold move, but she hoped that by sharing her love for gardening, they could find common ground. Perhaps, through laughter and conversation, they could mend the rift that had grown between them. With a deep breath, Sarah began to plan the gathering. She envisioned a warm evening filled with the scent of blooming flowers, the sound of laughter, and the promise of new beginnings. Little did she know that this simple act of kindness would set the stage for a transformation that neither of them could have anticipated. Chapter 2: The Invitation. The next morning, Sarah awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. The sun streamed through her window, casting a golden light across her room, and she felt a flicker of hope. She spent the day preparing for the garden party, determined to create an inviting atmosphere that would encourage Tom to let go of their grievances. She carefully selected a date, choosing a Saturday evening when she knew Tom would be home. As she planned the menu, she decided to keep it simple yet delightful: fresh lemonade, homemade cookies, and a selection of her garden's bounty. She wanted to showcase the beauty of her flowers, so she arranged small bouquets of sunflowers and daisies to place around her patio. Each arrangement was a reminder of her passion for gardening and her desire to share that joy with Tom. As the day of the party approached, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. What if Tom refused to come? What if he was still too angry to engage in conversation? She pushed those thoughts aside, reminding herself that this was a step toward healing. She wanted to show him that her sunflowers were not meant to overshadow his garden, but to celebrate the beauty of nature and the joy of gardening. On the day of the party, Sarah spent the morning tidying her yard, trimming the edges of her flower beds, and ensuring that everything looked perfect. She donned a light summer dress, feeling a sense of optimism as she prepared for the evening. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over her garden, she set the table with colorful plates and glasses, arranging the flowers just so. When the time came, Sarah took a deep breath and walked over to Tom's house, her heart pounding in her chest. She knocked on the door, and after a moment, Tom appeared, his expression cautious. "Hi, Tom," Sarah said, forcing a smile. "I wanted to invite you to a little garden party I'm having this evening. I thought it might be nice to share some food and enjoy the flowers together." Tom hesitated, his brow furrowing as he processed her invitation. "A garden party," he repeated, glancing at the vibrant sunflowers that lined the fence. "Isn't that the same garden that's been causing all the trouble?" "Yes, but I hope we can put that behind us," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "I really want to show you that my flowers are meant to bring joy, not conflict. It would mean a lot to me if you could come." After a moment of silence, Tom sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "All right, I'll come. But I can't promise I'll be in a good mood." "Fair enough," Sarah said, relief washing over her. "Just come as you are. I'll see you at 6. As she walked back to her house, Sarah felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. She had taken the first step toward reconciliation, but she knew that the evening would require patience and understanding. She set to work finalizing the preparations, her mind racing with thoughts of how the evening might unfold. When 6 o'clock arrived, Sarah stood at her patio, nervously adjusting the table settings. The sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the horizon in hues of orange and pink. She could hear the distant sounds of laughter and chatter from other neighbors enjoying their own evenings, but her focus remained on the task at hand. Finally, she spotted Tom walking down the path, his hands tucked into his pockets. He looked hesitant, but Sarah greeted him with a warm smile. "I'm glad you made it," she said, gesturing for him to take a seat at the table. Tom sat down, his expression still guarded. "This looks nice," he said, glancing around at the colorful arrangements and the inviting spread of food. "You've put a lot of effort into this." "Thank you," Sarah replied, pouring him a glass of lemonade. "I wanted to create a space where we could talk without any tension. I hope we can find a way to move past our disagreements." As they began to eat, the initial awkwardness hung in the air, but Sarah was determined to break the ice. "So, how's your vegetable garden doing?" she asked, genuinely interested. Tom's eyes lit up slightly at the mention of his garden. "It's doing well, actually. The tomatoes are coming in nicely, and I've been experimenting with some new varieties of peppers." "Really? I'd love to hear more about that," Sarah encouraged, leaning in. "I've always admired how you manage to grow such healthy vegetables. Maybe you could give me some tips." As they continued to talk, the conversation began to flow more easily. They shared stories about their gardening experiences, discussing the challenges and triumphs they had faced. Sarah learned about Tom's favorite heirloom tomato varieties, while Tom listened intently as Sarah described her plans for a butterfly garden. With each passing moment, the tension between them began to dissipate. They laughed over shared anecdotes, and Sarah could see a flicker of warmth in Tom's demeanor. It was as if the sunflowers that had once divided them were now a bridge, connecting their passions and experiences. As the evening wore on, Sarah felt a sense of hope blossoming. Perhaps this garden party was the first step toward healing their relationship. But she knew that the real challenge lay ahead, finding a way to compromise and work together to create a harmonious space that honored both their gardens. Little did she know, the seeds of friendship were already beginning to take root. Chapter 3. The Blooming Understanding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the garden, Sarah and Tom continued to share stories and laughter. The initial tension that had hung between them began to fade, replaced by a sense of camaraderie that felt both refreshing and unexpected. "Did you know that sunflowers can actually help improve the soil?" Sarah said, her enthusiasm bubbling over. "They're great for attracting pollinators, too." I've noticed more bees and butterflies since I planted them. Tom raised an eyebrow, intrigued. I didn't know that. I always thought they were just pretty to look at. I guess I've been too focused on my vegetables to appreciate the beauty of flowers. Sarah smiled, sensing an opportunity to bridge their differences. Flowers can be beneficial for vegetable gardens, too. They can attract beneficial insects that help with pollination and pest control. Maybe we could find a way to incorporate both our gardens into a more cohesive space. Tom considered her suggestion, his brow furrowing slightly. You mean, like a garden that has both flowers and vegetables? I've never thought about that before. Exactly, Sarah replied, her excitement palpable. We could create a border of flowers along the fence, and you could plant your vegetables in the sunniest spots. It would be beautiful and functional. Tom took a sip of his lemonade, contemplating her idea. I suppose it could work. I've always wanted to try companion planting, but I never knew where to start. As they continued to discuss their gardening philosophies, Sarah felt a sense of relief wash over her. The animosity that had once defined their relationship was slowly being replaced by a shared vision. They began to sketch out ideas for their combined garden, using napkins as makeshift canvases. Maybe we could plant marigolds alongside your tomatoes, Sarah suggested. They're known to deter pests, and they'll add a splash of color. Marigolds, huh? Tom mused, nodding thoughtfully. I've seen those at the garden center. I always thought they were just for decoration, but I like the idea of using them strategically. As the evening progressed, they moved from the table to the garden, where the sunflowers stood tall and proud. Sarah pointed out the different varieties she had planted, explaining their unique characteristics and how they thrived in the sunlight. Tom listened intently, his initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. Your garden is really impressive, Sarah, he admitted, glancing around at the vibrant blooms. I can see how much work you've put into it. It's inspiring. Thank you, Tom. That means a lot coming from you, she replied, feeling a warmth in her chest. I've always believed that gardening is about more than just growing plants. It's about creating a space that brings joy and beauty to our lives. Tom nodded, his expression softening. I guess I've been so focused on my vegetables that I forgot to appreciate the beauty around me. I've been a bit stubborn, haven't I? Sarah chuckled lightly. We both have. But I think we can learn from each other. Your vegetables are important, and so are my flowers. Together, we can create something really special. As they stood among the sunflowers, a sense of understanding blossomed between them. The shared laughter and ideas had transformed their conflict into a collaborative effort, and for the first time in months, Sarah felt hopeful about their future as neighbors. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Sarah and Tom made plans to meet again the following weekend to start working on their new garden design. They agreed to share tools, seeds, and even some of their favorite gardening tips. The garden party had not only served as a catalyst for reconciliation, but had also laid the groundwork for a partnership that neither of them had anticipated. As Tom left that evening, he turned to Sarah with a genuine smile. Thanks for inviting me over. I didn't expect to have such a good time. I'm looking forward to working together. Me too, Tom, Sarah replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. Here's to new beginnings. With that, they parted ways, each feeling lighter than they had in months. The seeds of friendship had been sown, and Sarah couldn't help but feel that their gardens, and their lives, were about to flourish in ways they had never imagined. Chapter 4. The Garden of Collaboration. The following weekend, Sarah and Tom met early in the morning, armed with gardening gloves, tools, and a shared enthusiasm for their new project. The air was crisp, and the sun shone brightly, promising a beautiful day ahead. As they surveyed the shared fence line, Sarah felt a sense of excitement bubbling within her. So, where do you think we should start? She asked, looking at Tom with eager anticipation. Tom scratched his chin, contemplating the layout. I think we should clear a section along the fence for the flowers first. That way, we can see how they'll look next to my vegetable garden. Great idea, Sarah replied, her eyes sparkling. Let's start by removing any weeds and debris. We can create a nice border for the flowers. They worked side by side, digging, pulling weeds, and laughing as they shared stories about their gardening mishaps. Tom recounted a time when he had accidentally planted his cucumbers too close together, resulting in a tangled mess of vines. Sarah shared her own tale of a failed attempt at growing pumpkins, which had turned into a feast for the local squirrels. As they cleared the area, they began to discuss the types of flowers they wanted to plant. "I think we should go with a mix of sunflowers and marigolds," Sarah suggested. "The sunflowers will add height, and the marigolds will bring in color and help with pest control." "I like that plan," Tom agreed. "And maybe we can add some zinnias for a pop of color. They attract butterflies, which would be nice for your garden." With their plan in place, they set to work, planting seeds and nurturing the soil. As they dug into the earth, they found a rhythm, their movements synchronized as they worked together. The initial awkwardness of their previous encounters faded away, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose. As the day wore on, they took breaks to admire their progress. The once barren section of the yard was beginning to transform into a vibrant tapestry of colors. Sarah felt a sense of pride swell within her as she watched the flowers take root, knowing that they were not just planting seeds in the ground but also cultivating a new friendship. By the time the sun began to set, they had made significant progress. The garden was alive with the promise of blooms, and both Sarah and Tom felt a sense of accomplishment. They stood side by side, surveying their work, and for the first time, they felt like true partners in gardening. "Thank you for today, Sarah," Tom said, wiping the sweat from his brow. "I didn't realize how much I needed this. It's nice to have someone to share this with." Sarah smiled, her heart full. "I feel the same way, Tom. I'm glad we decided to work together. It's amazing what we can accomplish when we put our differences aside." As they packed up their tools and prepared to head home, Sarah felt a sense of hope for the future. The garden was not just a reflection of their hard work, it was a symbol of their newfound friendship and collaboration. They had turned a conflict into an opportunity for growth, both in their gardens and in their lives. As they parted ways, Sarah couldn't help but think about how far they had come. The sunflowers that had once divided them were now a source of unity, and she looked forward to watching their garden and their friendship